Wait, you're only rank 72? I thought the demon rank 72 had already died. Imari asked in disbelief, while trying to stand back up, but failing due to her injuries. Oh, they did die. I'm the new one. Madison shrugged as Sylvia walked over and healed Imari. Hearing her mention that she was the new one so casually, Ymir was speechless, since she hadn't seen such a carefree candidate before. Each of the candidates would be on guard with one another and wouldn't be on good terms unless they were. In an alliance, this was the first time that a candidate would actively help save the enemy soldiers and even offer to heal the queen candidate. Gritting her teeth from the shame she was feeling, Imari stood up and looked at Madison. What kind of demons are you lot? Most would just kill us since they can get followers if they demonstrate their power. There's no need to keep the enemy alive. Imari furrowed her brows. But what kind of demons are we lot, she says. Madison laughed while glancing back at the party. I'm the only demon here. The rest here are humans, Angel. She's a phoenix. She's a spirit, and these two are elves. Madison smiled as Imari paused in shock at the diversity of the races in a single party. She knew that spirits and elves had a good relationship, so she wasn't surprised, but the fact that they even had an angel and phoenix was the most surprising of all. Even the fact that a demon and human are in the same party was no longer surprising, since there were more shocking facts. Looking at her face, I'd say she's surprised at our races. Shiro laughed. True, but setting that aside, are you going to work under me? Madison asked again. Are you going to kill me if I say no? Imari asked while biting her lip. Probably. But don't worry, even if you do work under me, I won't be interfering too much since I've got more important matters. As for your subordinates, if you say no and I kill you, I won't kill them. Madison replied with a smile. I see. What's your goal in all of this? Imari asked. To become the queen so that I don't become a brainless batch for the Demon King? Madison shrugged. Hearing this, Imari paused in understanding. For a person like her, she hated that she would become intoxicated if a king ascended, so the thought that Madison wanted to be the queen to avoid this was relieving. After all, if the final victor is a queen, they would be spared the fate of wanting to become the king's wife. But honestly, if you don't want to work under me, it doesn't matter since I can get someone else to look after the southern border. Balir is already working with me, so getting her to rule the southern borders wouldn't be a bad idea. Hearing this, Imari paused in surprise. Hey, Balir is working with you? I thought she was working with rank 49. She was. But I beat her, and it turns out she knows an acquaintance of ours, so now we're working together. I'll probably eliminate rank 49 on my way up, so it's up to you. If you want to join, but make your choice quick. We're on a tight schedule. Madison frowned as Imari thought about it for a moment. Ranov Doctor. Taking a deep breath, she looked at the dark red sky that she had seen since her birth. Staying silent, Madison understood that this was probably a hard decision for someone like her, since, in their mind, this was akin to becoming a slave. Sure, she wouldn't do anything to her or kill her if she agrees, but the shame they feel was something she couldn't do anything about. After a long pause, she nodded her head. I'll work under you, Imari said as she looked down at the ground with a sigh. Great. Do you need some help in escorting your soldiers back? We're going to be going to the eastern borders immediately, so we won't have time to send them back gently. Plus, since you're working under me now, I won't do anything about the land that we have taken over. You can use them like you have before. But they're essentially my land now, okay? Madison smiled as Imari nodded her head. Understood. What should I call you? She asked as she struggled for a moment but kneeled down in front of Madison. Just call me Madison like everyone else. I don't really care about formality. My main goal is to just become the queen. Madison shrugged before turning back to the party. Since she decided to work with us, let's go to the eastern borders. Madison smiled. It shouldn't take long. Since they're higher level at the eastern border, I'll do some scouting first. The highest rank should be 6, so I'll go challenge them and get the general feel of the demon ranks. I'll tell you if you can just storm in or if we have to work around a few things. While they're not proper kings or queens, you never know what they might have up their sleeves. Shiro shrugged as Madison nodded her head. Try not to alert the higher ranks, if you can just in case. Normally, there's always a great disparity from rank 6 to the top 5, so if we alert them, there's a chance that things could go south for us. While you may be able to fight them yourself, having all of them gang up on you might be annoying. Madison reminded as Shiro nodded her head. Don't worry. It'll be rather shameful if I got defeated by a candidate after all. Shiro laughed. After all, she was an empress class along with being a demigod. Even queens would struggle to fight her, much less candidates, so if she actually lost, she might as well bury herself in the ground. Of course, this didn't mean that she would drop her guard. Much like what happened between Lyrica and Imari, a single mistake was all it took to end the fight. She had a few more fail-safes, but she couldn't be too careless. Hearing that Shiro mentioned the candidates as mere, Imari couldn't help but wonder about the identity of the white-haired girl. However, remembering the power that she had demonstrated, Imari admitted that she was very strong. Strong to the point she could look down on the candidates, which made her suspect that she was probably on the level of a queen. Making a car for everyone to enter, Shiro left with the party towards the eastern border, leaving behind Imari, who was waiting for the soldiers and her assistant to wake up. Groaning softly, her assistant struggled to get up for a moment and panicked, remembering the previous fight. Looking down at herself, she was curious as to why she was in perfect form. If her memory was right, she should have several broken bones, or worse, dead. In front of her, Imari was sitting on the ground with a downcast expression. "You're awake," Imari said as her assistants kneeled and nodded her head. If I may be so rude as to ask what happened, we were spared. The girl who defeated us was working with the rank 70 Siskant candidate. Well, ranks are somewhat superficial, since the strength she demonstrated was much higher than even the ones in the center. They're moving towards the eastern borders right now. I think it wouldn't be long until we receive news of the eastern borders conquest. Imari sighed. We were spared? The assistant looked up in confusion, since a battle between two candidates would end with one side being dead. We're going to work under her. We'll be looking after land like we have while she conquers the rest of the continent. Imari leaned back and glanced towards her longtime friend. The fact that none of us have died is rather miraculous, isn't it? She smiled. Nodding her head, the assistant stayed silent since she understood that Imari must be feeling a lot of shame right now since she agreed on working under someone. Plus, they were strong to the point that they didn't even bother assigning someone to keep them in order, which proves how little they thought of them. The only thing that she could do was try her best to support Imari from now on. Little did they. No, Shiro had already attached nanobots on them to make sure that they don't step out of the line since she wasn't that kind. If they plan on doing something that could be detrimental to the party, she would kill them immediately. While they were driving to the eastern borders, Shiro couldn't help but think back to Veron. Since she knows where his main anchor is, it might be a good time to go pay it a visit. Plus, she needs to take revenge on the Guardian for almost killing her and Nantien back then. Narrowing her eyes, her lips curled up into a grin as her next goal has been determined. Arriving at the eastern border, they were immediately greeted by a group of guards who were stopping anyone from entering the eastern border. "Halt!" one of the guards called out as Shiro glanced to the party. "Should I stop?" "From their killing." "Intent. I can't say that they plan to spare us if we stop," Shiro asked. "Let's stop and see what they want to do. It's not like we're in any real harm anyways. They don't look that powerful, do they?" Madison asked while glancing at the guards. Since everyone here knew how to decrease their mana signals to a certain extent, the guards thought they were all weaker than them. Of course, Shiro, on the other hand, was able to suppress her mana completely, so she seemed like a useless demon in their eyes. Seeing that the rest of the party agreed with Madison, Shiro stopped the car and stepped out. Watching the party step out, the guards were shocked at their beauty and glanced at one another. "State your business at the border. You should know that this route is sealed off to anyone coming from the south. If you want to enter, you need to have a permit." Another guard called out, "Sorry, we didn't know about that. Do you know how we can get a permit? We're in a rush to go to the east." Madison apologized as the guards furrowed their brows. "I'm sorry, you cannot get past then. However, I suppose there is something else that you can do." A third guard smiled and made a gesture to the other guards, who only laughed and proceeded to surround the group. "What are you doing?" Madison frowned. However, without replying, the guards immediately sprung into action as Lyrica frowned, since it seems like they've done this before, which only caused her to despise them. Bringing out her shield, Madison slammed it on the ground and erected a barrier around them. "Ping!" Blocking their attacks, Madison looked at Shiro. "I take it as we should kill them rather than let them live. It seems like they've done this a few times, so we can assume that they've probably assaulted quite a few people." Madison asked. "It's your land, so I'll let you decide." "I can't be making choices for you all the time now, can I?" Shiro chuckled as Madison nodded her head. "In that case, wipe them out." Madison dismissed her shield and brought out a great axe. Hearing this, Lyrica activated a Tier 5 magic circle, as tens of swords appeared all around them. Dashing forward, Lyrica narrowed her eyes and swiped her hand. All of the swords moved according to her gesture as the guard quickly activated a skill which allowed him to move back just enough to dodge the swords. However, Lyrica was a step ahead of him. Appearing behind him, she slammed her palm into his. "Back! Crack!" Widening his eyes, the guard coughed up a mouthful of blood, but the pain didn't end there. Suddenly, hundreds of tiny blades erupted out of his body as he was killed in an instant. During that moment, Lyrica had summoned blades at the point of contact which blossomed out in his body. Even if he survived the initial burst, He wouldn't have been in any condition to fight with that kind of wound. A bit bloody, but rather effective. Shiro thought with a smile as both Nimue and Izuel couldn't help but agree. She's come a long way, hasn't she? Nimue chuckled as Shiro nodded her head. Indeed. Madison isn't far off either. Shiro grinned, seeing Madison cleave 2 guards in half despite their defense with a single horizontal swing. The other party members weren't idle either, since they killed the guards that were blocking their side with ease. Seeing all of this, the guards on the wall were shocked and quickly sprang to action, but Sylvia smiled cruelly at them. Slamming her staff down, she opened her mouth. Slow, blind, poison, nausea, organ rupture. Activating several Tier 5 magic circles, all of the guards coughed up blood as they collapsed in an instant. Normally, the spell that ruptured their organs wouldn't work, since a high-level adventurer would have a strong internal body as well, but with their strength disparity, it was a simple task for Sylvia to destroy them internally with a single spell. However, just in case any of them survived, she added poison, nausea, and blindness so that they can die by the side without interrupting. Reno was staying silent at Sylvia's display. Shiro could almost remember the pure Sylvia that they had met during the first few weeks in New York. You make me proud. Sniff. Shiro wiped a silent tear at how far Sylvia had come. By normal standards, the healer would be worrying about their life all the time. But that wasn't the case for Sylvia. Even if they target her, they wouldn't be able to kill her quick. Enough due to the amount of debuffs that she could cause along with her self-heal. Shiro had to admit that if she needed to fight Sylvia in a one-on-one, the battle would be extremely long and tedious, since she'd need to cleanse herself of debuffs continuously, while Sylvia's healing was most likely more outrageous than hers. Despite not being a queen candidate or a queen, Shiro could say that Sylvia was a match for most of the lower-ranked queens, solely because of her healing. Sure, she might not be able to kill them quickly, but the opposite was the same. If anything, Shiro guessed that Sylvia could probably exhaust the queens. The battle was short and completely one-sided. With the complete slaughter of the guards that protected the border from the southern corner to the eastern, the party entered the car and continued their journey. While this was happening, a single crow out of a horde of ones that were killed looked at the scene with fear as it attempted to fly away, but another needle pierced its head and it was killed in an instant. That's the 70th crow that she's killed, a figure muttered as he narrowed his eyes. He had long black hair that extended past his back and a pair of cruel red eyes. Standing up, he walked to the balcony of his castle and frowned. He had heard of a small uprising in the south and decided to send a few scouts to check out the situation, but 70 of his crows had been slain by a single woman, a white-haired girl who only smiled at the direction of the crown and killed them with ease. Despite the crows having no magical signal or intent, she was actually able to pinpoint them the moment they set eyes on the party. Her senses are sharp, he thought to himself. Each time he sent a crow, he would only be able to get a single glimpse before his vision turned black. But with the 70th crow, he was able to get a rough estimate of their overall strength, except for white-haired girl. In his eyes, she seemed unfathomable, and her strength was limitless. Even her small demonstration against Imari left him speechless, since he almost couldn't keep up with her speed. Sure, the crow lived for a short moment, but that moment was enough for him to see her appear next to Imari and reappear back in her initial spot. We need to deal with this. If she's left alone, the demon race will go under her control. Perhaps. She's in the new realm, hence why her strength is unmatched, he muttered. Jusha, the man called out as a woman flickered next to him. You called my lord? Call for a meeting between candidates ranked 10 to 2. We need to have a meeting to discuss the problem that's encroaching on us. If we don't deal with his small uprising, we'll be killed off one by one, and by then, it'll be over for us. The man ordered as Julia furrowed her brows. Should I not include those of the lower ranks? She asked, since the demons ranked from 20 to 11 were also powerful. No need. They're too weak to impact the battle at all. If anything, they'll serve more. As a hindrance. The man shook his head as the woman nodded. Understood. I shall send this message right away. Watching the woman leave, the man sighed and looking towards the south and frowned. Perhaps I need to reach the new realm first before challenging her, he muttered. Gnostic LVL 500 demonic king candidate. With their short fight at the border, the rest of the journey was rather peaceful, since no demon guards even approached them, which made sense considering that they were already past the border. Compared to the southern border, the skies of the eastern border seemed much darker, with quite a large wasteland that had signs of battle which accumulated over the years. If they continued to drive for another 3 hours, they would reach the first small-scale city, since the eastern borders were much bigger than the southern borders. While the southern borders had width, it didn't extend too deep into the demon continent. For the eastern border, it was roughly twice as big as the southern borders. Naturally, the center is the biggest area, but it wasn't a concern right now, since they would be conquering the eastern border first. To avoid some trouble at the first city, so that they didn't need to fight at all, the party increased their mana signal so that they didn't seem like weaklings. After all, in the demon continent, the weak is preyed upon, especially in a place like this, so making themselves seem weaker is akin to asking for a fight rather than avoiding one. After 2.5 hours of travel, Shiro saw the distant city, and dismissed her car. Walking the rest of the distance by foot, they entered without too much hassle. Unlike human cities, the guards here didn't ask for any forms of identification, nor did they do much in terms of patrol. In Shiro's eyes, claiming the city would be way too easy since the security was lax. Let's go to an inn right now. I want to ask them about the higher ranks. Shiro suggested, since she was planning on challenging rank 6, to gauge their strength, then figure out what to do from there. Sure, we won't be staying here for long, though. We'll probably spend the night here, since it's getting pretty late, Madison said, since they were on the road for quite a while. Looking around for an inn of sorts, they were disappointed to find a few shabby buildings, since most would just make their way to a bigger city, rather than this remote one that was near the southern borders. In the end, they decided that they would stay at a house that Shiro makes. Making their way to the nearest bar, they decided that they should get some information there. While they were walking over, Sylvia decided to send a message to a private group chat. Sylvia: "So then, since we're going to a bar, aren't you curious about what Shiro is like drunk? I know her alcohol tolerance is very high, but what if I get rid of that?" Madison: "I'm curious, but I don't think it's going to affect her. For someone her level, I'm pretty sure she has a resistance to poison such as alcohol." Sylvia: "That is true. Ugh. I just want to see her drunk for once. I mean, surely you're curious too, right?" Lyrica: "She's not wrong. I am indeed quite curious about it." Sylvia: "Maybe we should ask her what she does to have a high resistance to alcohol. If it's something we can't do anything about, I guess we'll have to ignore it." Sensing that the party seemed to be planning something, Shiro raised her eyebrows and glanced over. When she did, the party only smiled, acting as though nothing happened. Staying silent, Shiro turned around. "They're definitely planning something," Shiro thought in her mind, since it wasn't often that the party would act like that. "Say, Shiro." Sylvia smiled and walked up to her. "Me? What is it?" Shiro glanced back at Sylvia. "How do you have a strong alcohol tolerance? Is it a skill or genetics?" Sylvia asked as Shiro paused for a moment. It's a mix of skills and nanobots. The skills increase my tolerance towards negative effects, and my nanobots detoxify me, I suppose, so I can't exactly be poisoned. Though if the poison is strong enough, I'd still be affected to some extent," Shiro explained with a shrug. "However, that chance is low since my resistances are close to 100%. Hearing this, Sylvia could only sigh. "What? Were you lot planning to get me drunk or something?" Shiro asked with a raised eyebrow. "A little." Sylvia coughed embarrassingly, since she knew that if she lied now, Shiro would find out anyways. "Well, to be honest, I've always been curious as to what I would act like if I was drunk, so I don't mind. Canceling some skills myself. Since I'm with you lot, I think I can trust you enough to get drunk." Shiro smiled. Previously, she didn't want to be drunk, since being drunk means she could be killed with ease. Without her poison resistance, her drink could be spiked. But with Sylvia around, who could detoxify quickly, she could relax. "Really?" Sylvia asked with surprise, since she didn't think someone strict like Shiro would actually agree on being drunk. Of course, that's on the condition that we get the intel first. Once we get the intel, we can go relax at the house, or something, since I'm not fond of the idea of having strangers see me drunk for the first time." Shiro shrugged as the party agreed with her idea. Entering the bar, they each split up and started to ask around for information regarding the higher ranking candidates. However, they weren't able to obtain much, since most of the people here didn't know much about them. All they know is that they were strong, much to their disappointment. In the end, they decided to buy some alcohol and make their way out the city. Creating a rather large house with a beautiful living room, the party sat down with all of the alcohol and started partying, using Celestial Path on herself as well as stopping the nanobots from detoxifying the drinks. Shiro started to drink with the rest of the party, but even after drinking for a while, Shiro only felt a little tipsy, but that was it. Seems like Shiro's alcohol tolerance is high even without the skills. Isilia chuckled as she had a blush on her face. She could barely stand anymore and was currently using the table as a crutch. Maybe it's just genetics, but we've got plenty of alcohol right now. Shiro smiled while glancing at the rest of the drinks that were piled up in the corner while being cooled by her magic. "Shiro!" Hearing a cry behind her, Shiro smiled and glanced back to see a drunk Lyrica hugging her from behind and resting, her chin on her shoulder. "I thought you wanted to see me drunk. How come you're drunk yourself?" Shiro asked with a chuckle. "It tastes good." Lyrica smiled happily as her eyes seemed dazed. "Man, it does. Sylvia did a good job in buying the nice ones. Shiro nodded her head, since there were a few ciders mixed in with the other drinks that had nice fruity tastes. Shiro, Lyrica called out as Shiro looked over. Mean? What is it? Feeling Lyrica suddenly kiss her on the cheeks, Shiro raised her eyebrow in surprise before patting her head. Oh my, Isilia chuckled. You're too drunk. Go to the sofa. Shiro smiled softly. If I went for the lips, you would dodge. Lyrica grinned before flopping herself on the sofa. How bold! Sylvia laughed from the background. She wasn't drunk yet, since she had been detoxifying herself. After all, she wanted to see Shiro drunk. Rolling her eyes, Shiro had another drink. Just as she took a sip, she snapped her fingers and a cuff appeared around Yin's wrists. Hey, I want to drink too. Yin pouted, since Shiro had been stopping her from drinking all night. You're still a kid? No drinking. Learn from your sister. Shiro laughed as Lysandra had been drinking sodas and juices, Che stingy. Yin sighed and walked away. Right now, Nimue, Izuel, Estrella, and Atesh were enjoying themselves, since it would be a bit boring if Shiro let them stay in the monorealm. Drinking a few more, Shiro swayed a little as her vision started to blur. It's a bit uncomfortable, Shiro muttered as she would occasionally close her eyes. Seeing this, Isilia understood that Shiro was beginning to feel drunk. Do you want to drink a few more? Isilia asked with a grin. Maybe, Shiro said while standing up. However, she suddenly tripped up on her foot and fell face first. Gah! Crying out in shock, Shiro sat up and rubbed her nose. Glaring at the floor, she felt angrier by the second. Stupid floor! She shouted out and summoned a lighting spear, slamming her. Spear down, a giant Tier 5 magic circle expanded out as the party immediately sobered up and ran away. Boom! Exploding the house into a million pieces, Madison had summoned her shield in time to protect everyone and looked at the scene with a forced smile. Shiro was still sitting on the floor while rocking back and forth like one of those Neverfall. Toys. Stupid floor making me hurt my nose, Shiro complained while trying to stand up some more. Falling over again, she seemed to be angry as another Tier 5 magic circle expanded out. Detoxify her? I'm trying, but she keeps canceling it, Sylvia cried out with a silent tear. Shit! Snapping her eyes open, Shiro immediately cured herself of headaches and activated her skills again since she could remember everything that was happening in 100% clarity. The fact that she kept cursing the floor and calling it stupid floor caused her to blush, but she quickly calmed herself down. It was just one time. I can just lie about remembering things. Shiro thought to herself, since it was rather embarrassing to see herself lose control like that. After all, the only thought that came to mind seeing herself drunk was that she had become a literal child, with too much power. Most of the time she kept herself calm and controlled, but being drunk threw that out of the window. Looking around her, she could see that they were still outside the city. Surprisingly, none of the guards had arrived since Aram and Madison used their skills to contain the destruction caused. If it wasn't for the fact that she was in a drunken rage, her attacks would have been more powerful, and it would have destroyed Madison's barrier in an instant. However, because they were weaker, Madison was able to succeed in containing everything with Sylvia's buffs. The rest of the party was looking at her with caution in their eyes, but seeing the usual calm Shiro, they collectively sighed in relief, and collapsed against the ground. Right now, there was just a circle of charred ground with craters and broken pieces of the house scattered around. Coughing lightly, Shiro quickly fixed up everything before getting everyone proper rooms to rest. In, next time we're not getting you drunk, Madison vowed before collapsing on the bed. Chuckling softly, Shiro helped the others into their own beds as she sat downstairs and made herself some food. You caused quite a bit of mess yesterday. Nimue smiled as she sat down as well. Cough! First. Time being drunk? Didn't expect that I would become a violent drunk? Shiro blushed in embarrassment, since she had thought that she would at most act a little differently rather than destroy everything around her in a tantrum because she couldn't walk. I must say, the light show you performed was quite amazing. Shame that the party contained it, otherwise the city would have gotten a nice fireworks show. Nimue laughed. Crawling up on the chair, Addie sat down and looked at Shiro. Mommy don't drink anymore, he said as Shiro rubbed her nose awkwardly. It was because Mommy wanted to see what being drunk felt like. Don't worry, I won't get drunk again. Shiro forced a smile and patted Addie's head. Nodding his head, he started to eat some breakfast as well. Once they finished their food, Shiro cleaned up and sat on the sofa for now since the rest of the party were resting after a sleepless night of looking after her. Renaud. Turning on the TV, she looked up the recent news. Thankfully, it seems like after the last incident, the Queens were planning to be a little more low-key as there was no more news of the Queens claiming cities. The world government had also put a notice out to the public saying that they shouldn't reside in areas where the Queens are, since they could kill you with a single snap of the finger. Aside from news about the queens, it seems like there were quite a few people believing the world was going to end, since the arrival of powerful individuals means something large was going to happen in the near future. While most dismissed it as crazy talk, Shiro knew that they were indeed correct, since the new age will start in a few short months, and once that happens, everything will be turned upside down. Resources will become rare for those not under a queen, and the law of the jungle will prevail. Human morals will slowly disappear as only a few people will be willing to help others during the later stages of the age. To make matters worse, those who get saved will believe that the people saving them have ulterior motives and kill them before they could accomplish that which only decreased the number of people willing to help each other, and that was just the weaker bunch of people participating in the new age. For the stronger ones, slavery will become common as those weaker than them will be used to perform tasks. Queens will use powerful humans as currency, such as trading several level 500s for a piece of land, and so on. They would cull the weak and use them as EXP for the strong, despite the fact that they were working towards nothing, since the system was lying to them. They would never get to know the truth, either, since the system would censor anything they say. In regard to this, which was just a cruel joke since they still believed they had a chance to save their world. The new age was just a giant cruel joke to see if the queen created by the current garden could win or not. If she can't, nobody wins. If she does, only she wins. Looking at her system interface, Shiro could kind of see why she would get rid of it, but at the same time, knowing that it was a crutch to people, she would probably leave it alone since it would do more good than bad. My future self never told me why I got rid of the system either. Since I've already changed the future, maybe I won't get rid of it in this timeline. Shiro mused to herself. Shaking her head, Shiro dismissed the thoughts for now. Just as she was about to continue, she felt several pairs of eyes on her as she frowned and teleported to the roof of her house. Flexing her fingers, all of the crows that looked towards her was killed, except for one. Teleporting the crow in front of her, she grabbed its neck and narrowed her eyes. Error, help me hit the one. Who sent this? Shiro said as circuits appeared on her hands and bounced around happily. Forming a spear, the circuit stabbed into the crow's head. Ka! Coughing up a mouthful of blood, Gnostic immediately cut the connection off with the crow the moment. He felt danger, but despite this, he was still harmed for a moment. As you can see, her senses are sharp, and no matter how many eyes I send at one time, she will get rid of them and even attack me using my eyes. She's not someone we can ignore, especially since she's now in the eastern borders. I estimate that her goal is to completely take over the continent and claim the race for herself, since her powers are definitely on the level of queens, Gnostic said while wiping the blood away. Clearly considering that you of all people were harmed by her with a single move. You two didn't even come face to face either. A woman frowned seeing that display. If Shiro could do this much through a medium, they didn't want to imagine what she could do in a one-on-one confrontation. Well, that's why I propose for us to team up and kill her as a group. But I need to reach tier 6 first, if I can, since I don't think we can face her with just the power of tier 5 spells. She also has a group with her, and from what I've seen, they are rather capable as well. Gnostic narrowed his eyes. Perhaps we should eliminate them one by one before focusing on her. Another candidate suggested, as Gnostic thought about it for a moment. That is feasible. If I can reach tier 6, at least then I'll be able to delay her, long enough for it to work. Otherwise, she'll just overwhelm us. Gnostic shook his head. How likely is it for you to reach tier 6 quickly then? Plus, are you sure you aren't doing this because you want to guarantee your ascension as the king? Because if you are, I'll fight you here and now. A queen candidate threatened as her aura flared around her. You can have guards watch me or whatever while I become tier 6 and know of the method yourself. I'm doing this so that we don't die, without a chance of fighting back. If anything, I'd rather one of you become the king or queen should I die instead of her. Gnostic shook his head as the queen stayed silent. Her aura calmed and she said nothing else since she could tell that he was being serious. Fine, let's delay her as much as we can for now. Try to stop her from conquering the east and we'll prepare some artifacts to deal with her as well. In the meantime, Gnostic, you better reach tier 6. Watching the candidates leave one by one, Gnostic stayed silent and closed his eyes. During the moment that he was harmed by the strange circuits, he felt a pair of eyes lock onto him with pure, killing intent before smiling coldly. He felt like he could hear her saying, "Found you," but he wasn't sure. Can we even kill her if I reach tier 6? He asked himself with doubt. Setting off a day later than planned, the party made their way further into the eastern border. Since they weren't able to get any information from the first city, they decided to make a beeline toward the largest city in the eastern border, Halia. The city was much bigger compared to New York and even had large defensive towers with weapons on top that were directed towards the sea. It was a port city where quite a few boats were visible from the road. With sea monsters attacking occasionally, the levels of the demons in the city was much higher. Most of them were ready to fight at a moment's notice, since the sea monsters don't send notices of attack. While driving to Halia, Shiro had sent drones to scout ahead and noticed that the most powerful mana signal here was only in the late 300 ballards, almost 400. But it belonged to a lone demon rather than a candidate, which caused Shiro to wonder where the candidates have disappeared to. Seems like our movements have already been noted. I can only find a few candidates, and none of the most powerful ones are around, Shiro said as she was finding a good place for them to start walking. After all, it would be a bit awkward to enter the city by car since the demons have wings. Eh? Why would they be keeping an eye on us, though? We're just a small group from the south, Madison asked. Well, there's been quite a few crows snooping around. I've killed them as soon as I sensed them, but it seems like they still transmitted enough information. The owner of these crows is a demon king candidate in the north, so I'm guessing that they probably sent down some intel and had the higher-ranking demons leave for now. Shiro said since it was the most logical scenario. When she tracked the crow back to the candidate, she could clearly sense several other strong mana signals, which meant that he was probably in a meeting of sorts. Maybe we'll have to fight multiple candidates at once, Shiro thought to herself, remembering what she had sensed. She could estimate that the candidate who sent the crows wasn't going to be too much of a problem if she plays her cards properly. While his mana signal was strong, she was confident that she could win. That's not exactly good news, is it? Madison furrowed her brows, since they didn't even know how strong rank 30 was, never mind those at the top. Sure, Shiro was with them, but she didn't want to always rely on Shiro. They needed to improve individually, so that when the new age arrives, Shiro wouldn't need to babysit them. Perhaps we should bring the fight to them rather than wait around, Lyrica suggested, since the longer they wait, the worse it could get. That is true, but we can't afford to rush things either. We don't have any information, and we're also in their home turf. We're at a disadvantage, so the best thing we can do right now is get some information on the higher ranks so we know what to expect. If they do come and fight, we'll be able to split the party up into favorable matchups. Arim spoke up as Sylvia agreed with her idea. Let's do that then. I'm not sure how much information can be gotten without arousing suspicion, but right now anything would help. Even if a fight starts, just regroup and escape with as much information as you can get. Lyrica nodded her head, seeing that the party was already planning a counterplan. Shiro smiled since there wasn't much she needed to do. If anything, the main thing they needed to improve on was their senses, since quite a few powerhouses would use familiars to scout out ahead to get information on their enemies. They didn't get that powerful by running into things mindlessly, thinking. About this, Shiro wondered if she should work on a technique together with Arim, one that would immediately attack all peering eyes the moment they spied on them. But making sure that it targeted the right ones was difficult, since there was no way to know who sent the scouts without checking it manually. If they just attacked indiscriminately, it could stop allies from getting an idea of the situation. Right. Now, she was relying on her own senses and attacking them with her nanobots, but that wasn't available for Arim. Her senses were a little weaker. And she didn't have nanobots to kill the scouts instantly. If their movements were discovered, the scouts could just disappear. While the party made their way through the city, Shiro sat at the roof of the defensive towers and completely suppressed her aura so that no one could discover her. Oh, Nobet closing. One of her eyes, she opened it back up and activated analysis on that one eye. Seeing the party moving through the city while all of the demons were revealed, she could see everything that was going on. I don't know a spell that could counter scouts, but I think I just made a spell that will give me a full view of everything that happens. Shiro sighed, since she theorized a new skill that uses her analysis skill as a reference to give her a deep scan of everything. In an area, everything will be revealed to her, including underground areas, mana-rich zones, barriers, and so on. Every magic circle will be shown, and she'll be able to cancel them at will with her celestial path. The fact that you just casually created a limited area, omniscient skill is crazy when you just wanted to get rid of scouts. Nimue said with a twitching smile, "You're exaggerating a bit with omniscience, since there is no real omniscience in this world. Even if there is, it would be quite boring, wouldn't it? Being able to know what happens tomorrow. You won't discover anything yourself," Shiro replied. "Do you think that's why gods like to do things on a whim? Because they might have a certain amount of knowledge on what happens, but decided to change it to give themselves some enjoyment?" Nimue shrugged. "Perhaps, though this skill is far from omniscience. It's just something that lets me understand. A place better. Think of it as a domain of sorts." Shiro chuckled. "I suppose that is the more accurate description. Going back to the topic of gods and omniscience, if you were given the choice of becoming a proper god, I suppose, one that is all-knowing and all-powerful, would you take that chance?" Nimue asked. "Nah, it'll be boring. My only real goal in becoming strong is so that I can enjoy life freely without worry that someone will come kill me or decide my path for me, like what happened with the scientists. Sure, I enjoy battle, but living without worry is better than battle. Plus, if I really wanted battle, I'll just make a clone of myself and fight me again. Shiro grinned. Battle junkie. As always then. Maybe. And I suppose it's a bit hypocritical, but I do enjoy the uncertainty in life. Will I find something I enjoy? Tomorrow? Will it be sad? Of course, no one likes sad surprises, such as big sis going away for real, but that's just how it is. Shiro smiled. Look at you becoming philosophical now. What next? Are you going to question the meaning of life? Nimue laughed. Maybe. Maybe not. Ha ha. But I'm saying this because with the rate I'm improving, I can say that there is a good chance for me to become a god of nanobots, I suppose. Though I'm not sure if I should even call it being a god. Sure, you have divinity, but gods are supposed to be this almighty being. As far as I know, the gods of the system are far from almighty. If they were, how would they be bound by the system? If anything, the closest thing to a god is the system itself. Shiro narrowed her eyes at the system. Before, as a kid, she had always wondered where the system came from or who made it. However, after a while, she gave up thinking about that since it didn't concern her and she wouldn't be able to get an answer anytime soon. But now, things were different. The system fit the description of God. It seemed as though it knew everything. It could grant unimaginable power, and it was unkillable. In the future, her future self said that she could get rid of the system, but it didn't mean she killed it, in a sense, which just brings up the question of what do you call the thing that created the system? Are they more powerful than this God that they've been interacting with all their life? Kicking her legs back and forth, Shiro was getting a little bored, since all she did was keep an eye out for anything to happen. Sigh. Sighing softly, Shiro summoned a drone above her and started to play around with it. Bored? Nimue asked as she appeared next to her. Since Nimue was beside her, Shiro quickly camouflaged her mana signal. A little. They're doing just fine right now, so there's not much I need to do. Shiro shrugged, which was the truth. The party had come a long way, and after staying away from her for a while, they had gotten used to doing things themselves. They were doing quite well and not arousing suspicion, since they were asking as though they were curious demons who had just come from the center. There were a few demons that were becoming a little suspicious, but the party would move to a different part of the city to avoid them and get more information. Even if they were suspicious, there wasn't much they could do. Talking with Nimue for a while, Shiro watched as the party made their way across the entire city and asking around for information. By the end of their information gathering, the entire city was suspicious, and they now had quite a few guards look around for them. However, the party acted faster as they were already on their way out of the city. Seeing that they were leaving the city, Shiro stood up and prepared to reconvene with them. Just as she stood up, she felt a surge of mana from the ocean as she raised her eyebrow. Oh, are we going to watch the monsters invade now? Shiro smiled as she sat down with her legs crossed. Do you want to help clear it, or are you just going to watch the show from up here? Nimue asked as they could see large groups of demons gathering with leaders in the front. Looking at the leaders, Shiro could guess that they were probably the queen candidates. But why would I want to help them out? If anything, I'll stick around and watch what's happening so that I can understand their abilities. Shiro laughed. Tapping her earpiece, she called the party. It seems like there's a monster invasion right now. Do you lot want to watch it? I've got nice seats up here, Shiro asked with a smile. Sure, I don't see why not. We're not going to be doing anything else anyways. Madison replied as the other party members agreed, snapping her fingers. Shiro made a portal for everyone, with the whole party on top of one of the defense towers. They looked at the scene. Whistle. Their military is quite powerful, isn't it? Seeing it from here is quite intimidating, Madison admitted as Shiro nodded her head. Seeing the army of level 300s with queen candidates leading them was awe-inspiring. Plus, they weren't even at full power since the higher-ranked queen candidates were away right now. Strangely enough, Shiro noticed that they seemed quite worried. Even if they're missing the main candidates, why do they seem worried? Shiro thought with a frown. Do you think it's because... Holy sht. Crying out in shock, Nimue watched as the entire sea seemed to rise up as a giant shadow of a monster appeared far in the sea. Despite the somewhat weaker mana signal, the sheer size of the thing was threatening enough. What the hell? Why is that thing so big? Madison asked as she looked at the monster with disgust. With its giant size, the monster was casting an ominous shadow over the city as the slimy skin glistened under the sun. Its head was bumpy, scarred, and deformed, with 3 pairs of eyes looking down at the city with anger. Looking at the seaweed attached to its body and a few corpses, Shiro understood that it was probably sleeping at the bottom of the sea, while they were looking at the monster. The candidates made their move as hundreds of Tier 5 magic circles appeared in the air and long-range destruction spells were cast. Narrowing her eyes, Shiro was shocked to see that the mana dissipate upon coming, in contact with the monster's skin. Even if the spell was strong enough not to be dispelled, the magic would be redirected to the side thanks to its skin. Glaring at the army, the monster went onto all fours before unhinging his jaw. Looking at the mana gathering towards the mouth, Shiro had a bad feeling which only increased with each passing second. Before she could even say anything, shards of light appeared in the sky as they surged towards the mouth of the monster. Bang! Fusing into a Tier 6 magic circle in an instant, Shiro slammed her hands together. Defend against the attack! She shouted out quickly as the party flared their mana and activated their spells without hesitation. Summoning her shield, Madison crouched down as Sylvia pushed her palms against her back. Suddenly, tens of Tier 5 magic circles appeared and buffed Madison before she jumped into the sky. Ha! Activating one of her skills, a huge illusionary figure appeared with her in the center. The figure wore heavy armor and had a cape which fluttered behind it. Running forward, she avoided accidentally stepping on any demons before jumping in front of the army and slammed her shield down. Boom! In an instant, a golden barrier wrapped around the city with Madison pushing her shield against the monster's mouth. While this was happening, RM summoned a crystal orb, which had several magic circles revolving around the orb. Tier 5 magic circles appeared around the monster as the gravity pulled against its limbs and back, forcing his head to look up diagonally. Two portals opened up as both Lyrica and Isilia summoned an array of large swords, which descended down and stabbed against the monster, but weren't able to pierce its body. As light gathered around the mouth, and the attack was about to be fired, large ice chains shot out of the ground and wrapped around the monster's body in an attempt to freeze it. But with the strange properties of the skin, the ice was shattered in an instant. However, Shiro's main goal had already been achieved. The chains had managed to pull the monster back slightly so that there is a higher chance for the breath to miss Madison's barrier. While she was strong, standing up to a Tier 6 breath attack at point-blank range was still quite difficult. The only reason she told Madison to block it was because she was confident in blocking it. Bang! Firing the breath, the world seemed to go dark from the intensity of the light. Shiro could see Madison's barrier hold against the breath for a short period of time, before shattering apart and forcing her avatar to be forcefully dispelled. Thankfully, they managed to avoid total destruction as the breath was aimed up. Shocked at the sudden appearance of the party, the candidates were surprised that all of their spells managed to bypass the threshold of being dispelled and retain quite a bit of power. While the swords didn't pierce its body, it prevented it from correcting its aim. Before they could even say anything, they watched as the monster grew 2 limbs from its back and grabbed the swords before shattering them into 2 pieces. I know, I said we should watch the show, but I feel like we should help out and kill this thing. I'll be honest, leaving it be would be quite disastrous. Shiro's smile twitched, since she had thought that they could deal with it themselves. However, now that she knew the monster could fire off Tier 6 spells and have a strange skin that could dispel magic, it wasn't something she could ignore anymore. I agree. While it makes sense that Lyrica's sword couldn't pierce its skin, the fact that it could stop mine as well is rather concerning. I don't know how they could repel something like this before. Isilia frowned, since her level was much higher than Lyrica's. They probably didn't. With the things stuck on it, I'd say it's been dormant for a while. Regardless, this might be the only challenging thing I face off against in the demon continent. Shiro grinned as she summoned Sylvanas. Flaring her mana, she coated her sword with lightning and disappeared from her spot. Reappearing above the monster, she twisted her body and slashed as hard as she could. Widening her eyes, she saw a small wound appear on the monster's body as the sea was cleaved in half behind him. Pausing. For a moment, joy appeared in her eyes. A good punching bag. Summoning a few more swords, she gestured for the party to follow up as she unleashed a flurry of blows against the monster. Each blow would only cause a small wound on the sea monster, but this scene was already miraculous in the eyes of the demons. They knew who this monster was, and there was only one other instance where it had appeared. When it did, it was a crisis for the entire demon race, as all of the candidates tried their best to halt its approach while sending it into a deep slumber. If it wasn't for the fact that the high ranks were called away for a meeting, they would be around to help stall the monster once more so that they could seal it away. After all, it had a special skin which made magic spells and physical attacks weak against him. In most cases, the magic and attack would just be brushed aside, but Shiro was actually able to cause a wound on his body, something that the candidates weren't able to accomplish. Seeing this, their morale was raised as they prepared support spells rather than offensive ones. The offensive spells would only be wasted. While she was attacking the monster with the party, Shiro saw the demons change to support spells and smiled. They're quite smart, aren't they? With attack spells not working, they instead decide to support us so that our attacks are more effective. Well, that's the normal reaction, no? Nimue asked as Shiro shook her head. You'll be surprised. If it was humans, they might have just kept firing their spells, thinking something would happen eventually. Shiro sighed since she had seen that situation way too many times, and she can guarantee that there was going to be one idiot who does that. Have more faith. Nimue laughed. I'm giving plenty of faith by allowing them more chances and paying attention to them on top of actually remembering the idiots who kept launching spells at me, thinking it'll actually work eventually. But each time there was always idiots who kept repeating the same mistake. Shiro rolled her eyes. That's just unlucky. But aren't Madison, Hillian, Sylvia, and Chen Yu human? Well, Madison is part demon, but you get the idea. Nimue smiled. I know that's why I said might have just kept firing, but there are always exceptions, Shiro replied while slashing at the monster once more, but this time she activated her force of elements and merged all of her attunements. Summoning a giant multicolored blade, Shiro didn't hesitate to swing it towards the monster. She had detected a few crows already and dealt with them, but kept a note in her mind since the higher-ranking candidates were probably on their way back. Sensing the danger of the giant blade, the monster wanted to run, but Body, Madison, and Arms sprang into action. With Aram increasing the gravity and the pressure on the monster, and Madison wrestling it with her avatar, it was struggling to get away and was forced to fight head-on, even though it wanted to avoid the strike. Gritting its teeth, it raised its arms and tried to block the strike. However, its actions were futile as the sword dug deep into its body. Even with its skin that held special properties, it was nothing against Shiro's skill. Falling back, the monster cried out in pain as blue blood flowed out of his body. Unfortunately, Shiro understood that she couldn't cut it in half right now, so instead, she turned the sword and cut off its left arm, since it was better than just hurting it. Without the arm, its actions would be limited. Zan obeys taking. A deep breath. She allowed her mana to regenerate for a moment, since using Force of Elements would always consume a lot of mana, hence its strength. Scrambling back on its feet, the monster tried to run away as Shiro grinned and appeared in front of it. You're not going anywhere. You seem to have quite a bit of XP stored in you. She laughed as she raised one of her hands. Suddenly, a tear. 5 magic circle expanded out as a reflection of her divine gardens appeared. Following the activation of the first portal, several more followed as the sky was soon filled with portals that created a pathway to her garden. Dark clouds loomed over the portals, hiding away the light of the sun as Shiro activated encroaching darkness to give herself a stat boost. Looking at the blood-red eyes that seemed to glow under the shadows, the monster felt fear as its body shook and it subconsciously took a step back. While this was happening, the demons looked at the scene with awe as the aura erupting out of. Shiro right now was much stronger than any of the candidates that reside in the city. While her identity was unknown, it didn't matter anymore since she was saving them all right now. From the portals, large ballistas suddenly appeared as the sky within the garden started to flicker with starlight. Slamming her palms together, a familiar tear magic circle appeared as the party remembered seeing this during the Tokyo incident. Only this time, it was heavily compressed and mass-produced within several ballistas, rather than just one bow. Wrath of Stars, Shiro called the name of her spell with a cold smile. Blinding light erupted out of the portal as hundreds of spells were activated simultaneously and slammed into the body of the monster, pushing him down into the sea. A tsunami was created as the demons quickly activated barriers alongside Madison so that the city wasn't swept away by the waves. As for the monster, it wasn't even allowed to scream as its skin would boil on contact with the pillars of light. Channeling the spell for 10 seconds after modifying its magic circle, Shiro snapped her finger and closed all the portals. All that remained as a half-melted corpse of the monster with its bones exposed towards the sky. Shockingly, all of the seawater around the monster had been boiled into salt as seawater quickly rushed back to refill the hole left by Shiro's spell. With her skill, the monster, she watched as her level shot up before stopping around 410. Whistle! He gave quite a bit of EXP. Shiro grinned since this journey was quite fruitful. Her initial impression was that she was just going to spectate most of the things that was happening, rather than making a move herself, but this monster allowed her to level up by quite a few levels. Name from Shiro race, Spirit Demi. God title, Expert Monster, 13,029, 100,000 humans killed. Fratricide, creator of the Frozen Hell series, incomplete. Creator of Yin-style Asura's Path, Seeker of Truths, Revolutionary Celestial Empress AX, Benevolent Saint AX, Error Code. Genocide, one of a kind, Virtue of Fortitude, Young Demigod level, 410 class. Divine Sylph, Nanomancer, Ascendant Ixa, HP, 6,002, 1,500, 1,000, 6 and 2, 500,000, Malner 21, weight 75s, Nmada 21, 80, 75,000, 1,000 STR, 42,000, 1,000 VIT, 34, 300,000 INT, 125,000, 1,000 AGI, 49, 700,000 DEX, 37, 300,000 DEF, 30 for 200,000 Unisign points, 0 attunements, Cosmic Ice, Tier 5 Apocalyptic Lightning, Tier 5 Stygian Steel, Tier 5 Astral Rift, Tier 5 Augmented with Calamity's Will, Void Star, Tier 5 Celestial Star, Tier 5 Dark Celestial, Phoenix Fire, Tier 5 Boreal Wind, Tier 5 Tectonic Quake, Tier 5 Oceanic Abyss, Tier 5 Nature, Tier 5, Tier Nanotech, Tier 6 Skills, Error, Extraction Divine Sylph, Nanomancer, Elemental Breath, Celestial Mirage, Force of Elements, Divine Raiment EX, Tier 5, Element Magic, Rift Strider EX, Divine Empress's Domain, EX, Monster Skill, Rejuvenation EX, Advanced Elemental Mastery, Spirit Assistance EX, Divine Court Appointment, Empress Blessing, Shared Burden, Nanotech Engineering. Tier 5, Analysis True Spirit Nature, Frozen Hell Series, Frozen Slumber, Azure, Hellfire, Borealis Lance, Frozen Chandelier, Ancient Healing Arts, Fire of Life, Grace Path of Ascendance, Phantom Path, Celestial Path Pandora's Requiem, Reaper, Limit Break, Origin, War Saint, Divine Enchantment, Current. Blessings. Asteria, Athena, Aphrodite, Ares, Artemis, Hades, Hermes, Poseidon. Nyx World Class. Magic, Requiem of the Dead, Grand Support. Class Magic, Requiem of the Demi-Goddess, Other. Minimap, Inspection, Disguise, Combust, Heavenly Constellation. Aurora, Chimera Arts, Divine Gardens, Hollow Deceit, Kitoma, Divine Language, Wrath of Stars, Eyes of the Gorgon, Miracle, Sigil of Night, Encroaching Darkness, Skill Scholar, Item Master, Limit Focus, Blessing of Chaos. With her mana at 21 billion points and her NT stat at 125 million, she could officially say that she had surpassed her previous Tier 6 self. Despite being Tier 5 and level 410, she was stronger than her peak. Plus, this was just the start. She was getting much stronger, and becoming level 410 had given her an additional skill too. When she said additional skill, it could be said that it was 2 skills rather than just 1, since the skill had 2 effects, one that activated on different conditions. The first activation condition was that she needed to be in a demigod form. For the second activation condition, it was that she needed to enter her god form. Divine Presence, Divinity of Nanobots, Demigod. Activation. When activated in demigod form, you bring out the maximum potential of your divinity during that period of time. Anything and everything can be turned into nanobots, including living beings. Anyone who does not have a resistance towards divinity is suppressed by you, and depending on the difference in strength, they will be eliminated immediately should you decide to convert their entire body into nanobots. Duration. This lasts until your demigod form runs out. Can be turned off manually. Cost, any cooldown, and a backlash. You feel twice the amount of pain they feel once the skill ends, your divinity is weakened for 2 days, and you receive a 20% decrease to your divine energy. God activation. When activated in God form, anyone under Tier 6 is unable to attack you. Tier 6 entities receive a 30% decrease to stats, and once they are weak enough, can be turned into nanobots immediately. Those under Tier 6 cannot fight against this unless they have a skill that can prevent the conversion of their body using divine energy. As you become more powerful, the minimum requirements to attempt to attack you will increase until only gods can fight against you. Your power over nanobots will reach their peak during this state. Duration. This lasts until your god form runs out. Can be turned off manually. Cost, N a cooldown, N a backlash, no limit. Minimum backlash is 90% decrease to stats, and access to nanobots is temporarily disabled for half a year. Reading this skill, Shiro was shocked at one of the sentences. Your power over nanobots will reach their peak during this state. Whether or not that meant her nanobots will become as strong as they ever could be, or just how strong they could become with her current power, Shiro didn't know, but the fact that the backlash was half a year of disabled access caused to think that it was the former. Just imagining the power of her nanobots at the peak caused her heart to pound with curiosity. Plus, she could casually turn those below Tier 6 into nanobots if she wished. Their effort, the time and dedication they took to reach this legendary tier, and yet it is gone with a snap of a finger. Thinking on this point, Shiro couldn't help but wonder what would happen to her. Sure, she was the controller, but there have been instances where the nanobots harmed her during the process. Ranob Sif. Her nanobots reached the peak of their power. Would she be consumed in an instant? Shaking her head, she kept a mental note of this and understood that she shouldn't casually use this ability since the risks could be much bigger than anything she could imagine. Looking at the corpse, then at the demons, she could see that they wanted to know their identity. With a few mana signals coming in from the distance, Shiro understood that the candidates were coming back. See if we can get some of the monster's skin as well as samples so that we can analyze what the hell was up with it. If we can make something from its skin, we might obtain armor that is highly resistant to magic, and it'll be helpful for Madison. Shiro said over the mic as Hillian was already collecting the materials. But with the sheer size of the monster, it was hard to grab large amounts into their inventory. However, Yin solved that by storing it in her rift, which surprised her. Yin, isn't your food in there? Why are you keeping a corpse in there? Shiro asked with a raised eyebrow. Oh, it's fine. I got plenty of space. Plus, I've already isolated it. Yin grinned as her speciality was more focused on the rift compared to Shiro, so it's only natural that her rift was better in some aspects. For example, Shiro can only stay in there for a certain amount of time before being forced out, but Yin can decide to stay there forever and she'll be fine. Of course, she'll need to come out for food, but that was about it. Since you have now stored away the entire corpse, I think we should leave now, Shiro said as she still can't believe that Yin could actually store everything away. But first, let me leave something for these demons, since it'll be unfair to take everything. Opening a portal to the rift again, Yin dropped a large cylindrical piece of flesh that was seared at one side and the other seemed to be cut off cleanly by the closing of the portal. Dropping it on the beach, the sheer size of the thing towered over the surrounding buildings like nothing. What part is that? We don't want to give them something too important now, Shiro asked as Yin grinned. It's the penis. You burnt like 70% of it, so it's much smaller than its original size. Yin laughed as Shiro stayed silent and sighed. Forget it. Let's leave before the candidates arrive. Shiro shook her head and created portals for everyone before the demons could ask them anything. Arriving at the scene, one of the higher-ranked candidates narrowed his eyes while looking at the large piece of flesh that was here. Looking at one of the recordings that only captured a small part of what had happened, he saw Shiro's final devastating attack and understood why Gnostic wanted everyone to team up. Plus, there was now evidence to his claim of perhaps dying, even if he reached Tier 6. After all, she managed to kill a monster that had an abnormal resistance to magic, along with the fact that it could fire Tier 6 spells they were forced to seal. The monster away last time, but she actually dealt with it, which meant that she was much stronger than them combined. Unless Gnostic reached Tier 6, there was indeed no fighting chance. Scratching his head in annoyance, he sighed heavily. Ferrum, send a message to Gnostic for me, he called out to his assistant. Flickering next to the candidate, a mature demon bowed slightly. Tell him I'm willing to use everything we have to help him reach Tier 6, so long as we come to a few agreements that are overseen by the system. Understood. Watching the mature demon disappear, the candidate looked at the sea that was still recovering, and clicked his tongue, cursing their luck for someone like this to appear in the demon continent at this time. What even is her goal? He thought to himself before leaving the area. News traveled around quickly, and now most of the demons know, of a party of strange individuals of great strength. They could take down one of the unkillable beasts with ease, and the female members possessed beautiful appearances that were far above the standard. One individual in particular that they focused on was a white-haired beauty that dealt the final blow to the beast. The demons heard that the skies had darkened due to her rage, and a torrent of destruction was called down on the monster with a single wave of her hand. Some even said that she was stronger than the rank 1 candidate, but they were quickly disposed of by the supporters of Gnostic, who seemed to be furious at these rumors. In their eyes, Gnostic was the strongest. Sure, they may have been forced to seal away the monster long ago, but years have passed, and Gnostic would have improved since then. There was a good chance that he could do the same. Naturally, this didn't bother the party at all, since they were spending their time experimenting and analyzing the materials that they had received from the giant corpse. Hillian was working on new armor. Arum was working on spells that could bypass biological traits, such as resistance to magic, so that if they see something like this again, they wouldn't be surprised. As for Shiro, she disguised herself and went around the place gathering information. She heard all of the rumors about the party, but at the same time, she had gathered more information on the candidates with a few simple lines that worked like a charm, since most of the guards were annoyed by the rumors. Oh, how would so-and-so defeat the boss then? What would they do to counter the rumored magic resistance? Asking questions like this caused the guards to brag about the candidates they were under. While it could be exaggerated, Shiro was able to get a general idea of how they worked. She managed to get quite a few bits of information regarding candidates ranked 10 to 4, but the top 3 were a mystery to her, even after searching around. She wanted to search some more, but Helion told her to regroup since he made a breakthrough with his experiments with the skin. Making her way back, Shiro wondered what Helion had managed to achieve with the material, since even she had a bit of a hard time killing the monster, so she brute forced her way through. Working around the magic resistance was annoying, but it could become very helpful if they could use it to their advantage. Arriving at the house she had created for both Helion's and Aram's testing of the material, she could see that everyone had already gathered here and were waiting for her. Sup. Shiro smiled while giving them a small wave. You're here. Since everyone is there, I suppose I'll show you the results of my efforts. Helion smiled as he pulled out a few pieces of material. First was an ingot of sorts that was colored dark blue and had a green hue when viewed in light. The second material was a white powder. The third was something similar to a sheet of leather, and the final one is a black liquid. Raising her eyebrow, Shiro noted that the materials didn't feel like they contained much mana. Normally this would mean that they were rather poor in quality, but since it came from the monster, Shiro knew that it was not the case. The first item is a metal that I managed to create by grinding some of the materials into fine dust. It's hard to forge with, since it's highly resistant to magic fire. I even had to use some of the stronger skills in my arsenal to forge a single ingot, and I must say, the magic resistance on this thing is crazy. If not for some of my passives that I received as Hephaestus' successor, I'm afraid a material like this would be out of my capabilities. If I was to make armor with this, I'm confident to say that almost no tier 5 spells can harm you. Unless it's a spell with crazy magic penetration, you'll be safe. For tier 6, this effect is weaker, but it'll still protect you quite a bit. Helion grinned before looking at the second item. For this powder, it was a mix of the monster's bones and skin. It's similar to the powder that I used to make the ingot, but this one can be applied directly to an armor in order to increase its magic. Resistance. Of course, the effects aren't as potent as the ingot, but considering the fact that we'll need to destroy the armor first before using the ingot, it's probably better to use the powder, especially since your armor is one of the best ones that I've crafted. Helion smiled. That is true. Your armor has been quite helpful. Getting rid of it would be a shame. Shiro smiled as this armor has stayed around for a while now. If not for the fact that it was bound and grew alongside her, she would have been forced to replace it, regardless of how good it was. Most armor could only be used for 5 levels after all. Che, when will I get armor that grows with me? I've been needing to change it every 5 levels. Honestly, aside from Yin's eating habits, buying material for smithing is where most of our party funds are disappearing into. Madison sighed. As the tank, armor was extremely important to her since it helps her with resisting against attacks. Don't worry, I'm working on something right now. Helion smiled as Madison nodded her head. The sheet of hide is similar to the first item, hard to use, but when turned into light armor it has high magic resistance. But these are just decent items compared to the last one. Helion narrowed his eyes and pointed at the ink. This ink is similar to enchantment ink that is used to specialized equipment. But when used to enchant something that a mage can use, their magic has increased resistance, which means it won't be broken easily. If the enemy has something similar to Shiro, like her celestial path, this means that it's hard to break your spells. Apart? Helion chuckled. For example, Shiro, can you try to break this spell? Helion asked as he created a tier 5 magic circle. Nodding her head, she activated Celestial Path and tried to break it like how she would normally. However, just as her needle came into contact with the magic circle, she felt a resistance, and her needle was deflected immediately and the spell activated. Naturally, Helion stopped the spell as the party paused in surprise, since Shiro's Celestial Path had rarely failed. Looking at the needle that fell to the ground, Shiro was quite surprised at the toughness of the spell. If this was in a battle, it could catch her off guard. But after the first attempt, she could somewhat understand its upper limit, so she'd be able to break it if he casts another spell. But during a battle, that one spell could turn the tides of battle. Shiro thought to herself. It's pretty good, isn't it? Helion laughed, since this was probably one of the better items considering the fact that there was a chance for people with a skill similar to Shiro's Celestial Path to take them by surprise. Plus, this ink also increased the potency of their spell slightly, since it did come from a monster that could fire tier 6 spells at will. How did you even make this? Shiro asked curiously, since she was quite impressed by it. It was honestly an accident. It's a byproduct of making this powder. Helion chuckled while pointing at the white powder. Some of the excess material leaked out and dropped into the fire, which started to fuse together with the second ingot that I tried to make. However, once the two started to fuse together in the fire, it refused to harden into an ingot, and instead became this ink instead. The more ink you use, the more resistant to magic the spell is, but there is naturally a limit. Using too much ink will cause your spells to fail since they collapse on themselves. I haven't found the best ratio yet, but I'm working on it. Helion smiled as Shiro nodded her head. I know Bess. Will you be able to make me an accessory using this ink of something? since having my spells reinforced means that I can be a bit more experimental with some spells. Having unstable spells that have a good chance of failure might become viable with this ink, Shiro muttered as Aram agreed with her on that. Since Helion is showing off his stuff, I should show off mine, too, Aram laughed. While I haven't made too much progress, I've developed a way to suppress passive skills and genetic advantages, such as magic resistance, healing, and so on. Theoretically, it could suppress Shiro's crazy health and mana regeneration. Arim explained. Hearing this, Shiro's interest was piqued. Oh, let's give it a try, Shiro said as she stabbed herself in the gut. With her natural healing, a wound like this will be healed quite quickly. Raising her eyebrow, Arim was used to Shiro's methods of testing and quickly activated her spell. A chain-like tattoo suddenly appeared on Shiro's body as her healing slowed down massively. Even her mana regeneration decreased as Shiro looked at the status effect with interest, since there wasn't a spell circle to cancel. It was almost instantaneous, which made it hard for her to analyze the spell. Interesting, Shiro muttered while activating Life Fire. Seems like this spell can't affect skills or spells right now. If we can repurpose it to completely suppress healing, battles would be less drawn out with our enemies being unable to regenerate, Shiro muttered while looking at her mana regen, which seemed to be as slow as a snail right now, especially when you remember that she has an astonishing 21 billion points of mana. Well, this has been rather fruitful, hasn't it? With how much material we still have, we can make quite a few full sets of armor, or maybe even more. If I can make some armor similar to Shiro's with this material, we wouldn't need to change every 5 levels. And we'll be able to save the material for something else. Helion smiled. Amidst? Nantian mentioned that I should train an elite task force or something back at the floating fortress, so maybe if we have some leftover armor, I can use it for the task force. Shiro nodded her head. Sure, if we have more powerful allies. It'll make the new age easier for us since we are lacking in manpower. But that can be made up for with powerful people, since quality is better than quantity. Helion agreed. Talking for a little longer, the party decided that Helion and Arim should stay behind and start finalizing their creations, while Shiro and the others start taking some land now. They have given the candidates enough of a break after the monster attack. After the initial chaos caused by the monster and Shiro's party, the rumors eventually died down after much work, and not as many of the demons questioned the superiority of the higher rankers anymore. Tapping his pen on the table, a soldier was looking out the window when he paused at 3 distant shadows that were flying towards the city at rapid pace. Furrowing his brows, he wondered who they were as he quickly donned his armor and ran out of the room, dashing across the wall. He tried to get a clearer look at the shadows and realized that it was 3 members of the party in the rumors. With Shiro in the center, Madison and Lyrica followed beside her. Before he could even say anything, Madison summoned her avatar as Lyrica opened 2 large portals. Giant handles slowly appeared from the portal as Madison grabbed them with her avatar and unsheathed 2 giant blades. Stomping down, her avatar reared its head back and released an ear-shattering cry. Rah! Understanding that this was probably a declaration of war, the guard turned around to call for help with fear in his eyes. If the rumors were true, then there was no way they could fight them but as soldiers. If they didn't fight, they would be killed by someone else. Just as he turned around, he sensed 2 presences not too far from him. Pfft! Mari's cry seemed to have scared the poor man. Lyrica laughed softly as she saw the fear-filled faces of the guards. Well, with the rumors and seeing it in person, I'm not surprised that they're scared. If anything, I'm more surprised that they still want to fight. Shiro shrugged as she casually walked past the guard. Say, should we kill you or should we spare you? Shiro decided to mess with him and ask with a grin. Stunned by the beauty of the woman in front of him, the demon quickly came to his senses after hearing her sentence. Swallowing a mouthful of saliva, he gritted his teeth and drew his weapon. You can spare me, but I'll be killed by the higher-ups anyway if I abandon my post. The demon took a deep breath and slashed towards her with fear in his eyes. Despite his fear, his form was not affected, and Shiro knew that he must have spent quite a bit of effort training himself. Ping! Catching the sword easily between her index and middle finger, Shiro glanced at Lyrica. He's quite resolute, isn't he? Shiro smiled before appearing behind him and knocking him out with a single hit. Indeed. Lyrica nodded her head as she also knocked one of the guards out. Looking at Madison, who was menacingly walking towards the city and drawing most of their attention, Shiro and Lyrica made their way through the guards, knocking out anyone who was in their path. In a few moments, the leaders were captured and the city was now under their control. Scenes like this continued to happen as the 3 were storming through the eastern borders now that it was clear that no one could stop them. The rumors that had faded away after great effort resurfaced since they were dominating the cities without any problems. At first, the citizens were afraid, But once they understood that the three didn't do anything to harm those uninvolved, they were a little more relaxed, since they had also spared the guards. The most they would do was knock them out, while those that continued to fight would have a few broken bones. But in this world, broken bones could be healed easily, so it was equal to just a slap on the wrist. While the civilians weren't worried, the candidates were panicking since there wasn't anything they could do about Shiro. Ranks 10 or higher couldn't be contacted, and those that were lower than rank 10 could only resort to running away. In a short few days, the entire eastern border was taken over, and the candidates that ran away evacuated to the center. The demons over there were forced to give up their own territory to the higher ranks, since they were the weaker party. As for Shiro, Madison, and Lyrica, they did think about recruiting a few people to look after the cities, but dismissed that thought. In the end, since each of the party members could look after a city on their own with ease, allocating the rest of the party members to look after the cities, Helion and Arim continued their research while doing this, since it wasn't too difficult to accomplish. All they had to do was drive back any invaders while the city functioned normally. Since Shiro, Madison, and Lyrica attacked quickly, the candidates couldn't bring the soldiers away, so they were given the task of continuing their job of defending the city. There were a few who refused, but they were given a warning so that they knew their place. It was Shiro who decided to reuse them so naturally they can be replaced whenever. Whether that meant killing them or not depended on their attitude towards them. After the first few demonstrations, the demons were much more obedient, since they were used to a society where those at the top of the food chain oppress those that are weaker than them. For the candidates that ran away, even though they were safe for now, the fear of death always felt close to them, and they decided to make their way towards the north to seek help. Normally, this would be akin to suicide, since they could be killed at any moment, but with a monster like Shiro chasing behind them, they had no choice. Not too long after they left, news of the party's appearance reached their ears as they felt fear grip at their hearts. Increasing the pace of their travel, they flew across the skies and reached the northern border. There were border guards who tried to stop them, but they ignored them and continued forward. This caused a fight to break out as the candidates slaughtered the guards without a second thought. Since they were going to probably die by Shiro's hands, they didn't care about the consequences anymore. But before they could even reach the halfway point, a heavy pressure crashed into them as a single demon stood in their path. Rank 10. Queen candidate, Asphil. Glaring at the intruders while they were trying to help Gnostic reach Tier 6, she couldn't help but feel disgusted by their presence. They had actually ran here all the way from the east out of fear rather than the desire to help. Take another step, and I'll kill you all. She warned with a harsh glare, but the candidates who forgot fear only laughed. The white-haired devil is making her way here. Going back means then die. Asphil interrupted since they had taken another step. Appearing in front of the candidate, she swiped up with her hand as the candidate's torso cleaved in half. We already know about her. Just delay time for us, and we'll deal with her when the time comes. It's not like you're going to become the king or queen anyway. Asphil narrowed her eyes as the candidates took a step back. Why waste your breath on them? They're dead regardless. A feminine voice laughed as miasma appeared around. The candidates. Their eyes became bloodshot as their skin started to turn a dark shade of purple. Go back and delay her for us. The same voice commanded as the candidates started to walk back. Che, your skills are disgusting as always. Asphil clicked her tongue at the sight of the woman that had just appeared. Oh, it's just a few parasites. It's not like they're dead now, but with them, we should be able to buy a bit more time. I thought that we'd have a bit longer, but she's quite hasty, isn't she? The woman laughed as Asphil nodded her head. Thankfully, she didn't come directly to the north, otherwise we'd be eliminated without a fighting chance. It's all up to Gnostic to fight her one-on-one while we deal with her friends. Once that is over, we'll be able to gang up on her and end her for good. She thought to herself, as their goal was to send demons to delay Shiro as long as possible. If they can do this, the chances of them surviving increases, making their way back, the Tuos. Demons disappeared from the area while the candidates returned to the center in order to delay Shiro.